They've fallen behind the technology, the investment, the leadership in chips, and what the expectation is by the Trump administration is, look, we've given you billions of dollars to try to get this together. You have not done a good job here. So how do we get you to do a better job? Well, if we're not going to get you to fire your CEO, we're going to try to get you to change because we're going to have ownership in the company. My name is Terrence Guay, and my title is the Director for the Center for Global Business Studies. So Intel is a tech company that was able to get some support from the Biden administration. The company has not done very well in recent years and has fallen behind in the technology. And so what the Trump administration is doing is trying to find a way to put pressure on the company to respond better, and even putting pressure on the CEO to resign. After they met last week in the White House, a new deal came out where the federal government is going to propose, apparently, a 10% ownership in Intel. And I think the thinking here is that this is going to give the U.S. government some leverage over what Intel does going forward, and to put some pressure on the company to try to make more innovative investments. There are certainly other countries around the world that do a lot of this. Countries in Europe, like France, for example, did this for many decades, although they've eased back. Italy and Spain have. China has definitely the Chinese model of state capitalism, which is very much a follow-through of what's been going on in East Asia. And now the United States has been doing this. Because what we've typically seen in the past is where the federal government has released its ownership and influence on a lot of industries. Right? This started in the 1970s under President Carter. It continued in the 1980s under President Reagan. We've seen a few hiccups in this, particularly with the financial crisis that we saw again in 2008. A few other banking kinds of issues that have happened in recent decades, but they've all been short-term. And there are very few instances where the federal government in the United States owns any significant share of a U.S. corporation. But now that we're seeing this happen with Nippon Steel, with Intel, with NVIDIA, we can see more of an emphasis that the Trump administration has to kind of weigh into this and to put the federal government's perspective on trying to improve jobs, improve the trade deficit, and to try to get companies to think more about the American economy rather than the global economy. I think the administration thinks that this is an industry of the future, that with AI and many of the other changes that are happening in the technology world, how it's being used in the military, I think there's an emphasis that having more influence over this is going to be critical for the United States. The United States looks at the advancements that China has been making here and thinks that how can we, if not get ahead, at least try to maintain our standards with China. That would be a way for us to help American companies to do that. Not a done deal, not clear what other expectations Intel would have to come up with here. Now, it's very likely that the contract with Intel would likely say, we want you to achieve a certain sort of market share, certain sort of chip design, certain sort of companies you're selling to. All of those could be mandated expectations for Intel to try to achieve. And underperforming any number of those could lead to more pressure, could lead to perhaps the demand for a greater stake, up to 20%.